All right, we're on. Um, so this is obviously your first subject in a two-subject elective stream. So we kind of start this semester by laying the groundwork, I guess, if you will, before we move into a bit more of an applied focus in the next subject. So you guys have both had me before, but for the benefit of people that might watch the recording that haven't, this is my email. Um, I am a teacher in the BCS. I'm also the course coordinator of the new trauma diploma that TAFE is running as well. I think the last time I had both of you guys, I wasn't working for TAFE full time, and I am now. So I don't need to do my little preamble about easier to catch me at nighttime and those kind of things. Just sing out. If you need to touch base about anything, flick me an email. I'm very happy to create some space during the day to have a chat. Probably especially relevant in this subject and the next one. I think the trauma elective, and this is the second year we've run it now. The first cohort went through last year. Um, because trauma, I guess, is a bit more of a not so much of a heavier topic, but a topic that I think touches a lot of nerves for people, like the when we look at the statistics and when we unpack what trauma is, we understand that every student in the class really has been touched by a trauma in some way or another. So if you feel like the subject content is getting too heavy or getting too hard, it's a bit of a different subject in that we don't want you to kind of, well, not that we want you to plod along and carry it on your own in any other subject either, but I think most students do rather than reach out and ask for help. But I guess I just wanted to set the subject up, and I'll do it next week as well in week one by saying if you need to debrief and if you need some additional support, if the content is a bit heavy one week, if you're, looking ahead and thinking maybe I won't go to that particular workshop because it might trigger something for me, it's totally fine. Reach out anytime. I'm happy to give you a call and have a chat if you need to. There's also the TAFE counsellor that we can refer you to, but I'll touch on that stuff next week. Workshops Mondays at 8 p.m. We do look at weekly content, but last semester, or last year, I should say, the first time we ran this, we went through some case study topics, which I found really helped bring the subject content to life for people. So I'm going to try and do that again. I'll touch base with you all every couple of weeks and just see how that's landing for you. Different cohorts will learn differently. So we'll see how the case studies work for you guys. And I guess the other thing I wanted to touch on, and I'll do this next week as well, is that the cohort that we've got, I appreciate that there's lots of lived experience, but also lots of industry experience as well in the room. I'll do a little preamble next week, but just in terms of keeping yourself and each other safe in the space, let's be mindful about what we share. I know sometimes talking about real life examples can bring a real rich discussion to the room, and I don't want to shut that down, but I think we just need to be a little bit cautious. We always redact and change names and things like that so people can't be identified, but I think we'll just be a little bit mindful of sharing in this topic, especially just so that we don't trigger things for other people, but also so that I'm not leaving you guys carrying heavy stuff at the end. Being an online workshop, it's hard to check the the vibe in the room and make sure that everyone's okay, like you can do in a face-to-face environment. And I'm conscious as well that some guys, like, you don't want to put your cameras on and stuff, so it becomes extra hard for me to just check in and make sure people are okay. So just some mindfulness, I think, about bringing life experience into the room in terms of those case studies. I'm also going to give you a preamble that if you do a hasty exit from my workshop, I'm just going to touch base with you afterwards and make sure you're okay. It's fine if you've had an internet meltdown, if you've had a young person or child that needs your attention at that Time and place, of course, it's fine. Tap out early if you need to. Give me a heads up that you can only stay for a bit of it. But if I do see some hasty exits just because of the content, I am going to just touch base via email and make sure everything's okay. So that's our weekly content. We're also, as always, going to look at assignments. I like to scaffold you guys with assignments. So planting the seeds early and then talking about them each week in terms of what the rubric is looking for and how to kind of attack those. So I've found over the last couple of years that tends to work really well. It means that by the time you sit down to write it, you've had a few conversations about it. You've had some opportunities to ask questions. So people tend to feel a bit more confident, I think. And workshops, of course, recorded and uploaded each week. The other thing that I need to remind you about is cameras and things as well. So for any students that haven't had me, or I guess are new to the workshop space, because they're recorded and uploaded, by putting your camera on during the workshop, that's obviously giving me consent to put your imagery online. It goes on YouTube, but it's not accessible to anybody outside of this particular class and subject. So even students that sit in different classes can't access the workshops of another class online. It's just the people in this particular class. But if you're uncomfortable with that, feel free to leave your camera off. Learning outcomes. So this is a little bit, I guess, about, it's very hard to read. Sorry, I won't use purple in future. This is a little bit about what we're going to get out of this subject. So hopefully by the end of it, you'll be able to identify lots of different types of trauma, and the impact on not just the individual, but also groups, families, larger communities. Then we're going to critically reflect on the socio-political, historical, and cultural aspects of trauma, particularly those that influence the prevalence and patterns of trauma in Australia. We look at ACEs in this subject. So the neurobiology of trauma, you're going to be very familiar with parts of the brain by the end of this subject, and particularly the parts of the brain that have a heavy response when fight, flight, trauma responses are activated. And we have a look at trauma responses, particularly on children and throughout the lifespan in terms of ACEs and that study. And then we sort of after the mid-semester break, we start moving into a trauma-informed framework. So looking organisationally, looking at how we practice with people and communities in a trauma-informed way. So we look at the trauma-informed principles for care. And particularly towards the end, we look at organisationally. So what does that mean to work in a trauma-informed organisation? And we do a little bit of a brainstorm there. I think the words trauma-informed are being thrown around a lot. It's becoming a bit of a buzzy word. So I guess I want to encourage you to critically reflect on that and what does that look like, not just for the people that access that service, but also the people that work in it as well. Because I still think we're catching up a little bit in that regard. So that's a bit of an overview of our 12 weeks. Our assessments, because I know everybody likes to know these ahead of time. You have a quiz due in week 3, 10%. You don't have any written work until week 7, so heading right towards the middle of the semester. And that's 5 short answer questions on the neurobiology of trauma. Hopefully by that point, we have several workshops on that topic, so you'll feel very confident to answer those. And then we start moving into case studies. So that will be after your mid-semester break, which I don't have the date in front of me, but is typically around week 9, I think. So you'll have your 2 weeks off and then you'll come back and your case study is due. So we will speak about that in weeks 8 and 9 leading up to that due date as well, so that you go into your break kind of well across what you need to do on that. And then a case study at the very end on minimizing re-traumatization. And that's due after week 12's last week of content. So you'll have that final week to do that. And I guess it's a good time to just flag to if any extensions are required for that one, we can only extend you by a week because week 14 is the end of the, we call it exam period, even though TAFE doesn't do exams, but that's the sort of official end of the semester. So if you need an extension, if there are things going on, you guys know me, I'm very flexible with that kind of stuff, but please get in early because I'm now full-time with TAFE and I'm not part-time. I'm less online on the weekends. So unless it's something that absolutely can't be helped and it's an emergency, and I get it that stuff happens, try not to send me an email on a Saturday asking for an extension of the assignment that's due on the Sunday night because I may not see it. Try and send it to me ahead of time. If you don't use it, you don't use it. But if you need it, at least it's kind of been, sitting there approved and we all know about it. So that's the assessments. I think they're spread out pretty well. They're also not overly heavy until you get to kind of case study 3 and 4. The second one's only 1,000 words. It's not particularly labor intensive, and the quizzes are usually pretty straightforward. So it's a bit of a kind of easy start into the assessments for this subject, which I quite like. And then I just wanted to give you a quick overview. I know we kind of talked about the learning outcomes, but really this is what the subject is focused on. We focus on what trauma is, but the impacts of trauma. And I guess that leads nicely into the neurobiology of trauma because it talks a little bit about, what happens physically in your body, but also what does that mean, right? Like, what does it mean when we've had copious amounts of cortisol and adrenaline running through our body because of something really traumatic? Common sense would kind of say, well, that would be exhausting, but what does that really look like? And then what does that look like to the people around us? What does that look like in the workplace? So if you've got a colleague that you're noticing some things about and you're a little bit worried, you might be a little bit more attuned to that. I guess my sort of hope for that too is for people that are working in management or positions where you have supervision over other staff, it's nice to work from this framework because it's less likely to lead into, I think, performance management for people and a nicer space to sit in, like what's happening for you at the moment and how can we help you stay well in the workforce. So that's my hope. That's my lens. And I guess that kind of aligns with the trauma-informed and recovery-oriented approaches as well. So that's our overview of the subject. I don't want to labour on. It's just an orientation. You guys know how to operate the Moodle and where to go and where to find things. So do you have any particular questions for me? Is there anything you want to ask? Anything you're curious about? How are you sitting with that?
Do we have more students, Carly?
Yes, you do. It's probably orientation on a Monday night's always quiet. It's probably because people are just logging on for today. They don't realize the sessions tonight. We do. I don't think it's a particularly huge class, which is good because it works. I think it works better in a bit, I don't want to use the word intimate, but in a smaller environment. I think you build rapport with each other a little bit quicker and the safety is a bit easier to establish. But yes, is the short answer to that. Any other questions? Anything burning? I'm just trying to do a little search on our subject to see how many people we do have. Here we are. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Oops, that's last year. We don't want to look at last year. We want to look at this year. While I'm doing this, if you've got any questions or if you're curious about anything, let me know. Here we are. Let's have a look. We've got outside, there's a couple of those that are teachers, about 23 people, which is a good sized class.
Yeah, my other elective, the first one was last year, so we had about, I think, 6, but it was good. Yeah.
We had about, I think we had 8 last year, which was nice. We sort of established, there's a core group that come to every kind of workshop, and that was really nice. There was some nice safety by week 3, 4 for sharing and kind of checking in with each other. So hopefully we'll have that again this semester. Kayla, any questions burning for you or just absorbing?
No, I'm good for now, thanks.
Cool. All right. Well, if that's it, I'll let you guys go. I've given you all you need to worry about this week. Just do what you usually do, poke around in the Moodle, get familiar with week 1. The way that I structure my workshops too is that you don't need to have read anything before you come each week. So, if this is the first touch you've had of the subject for the week, by the time we come to a workshop, that's totally fine as well. All right, guys, have a lovely week ahead. Enjoy the rest of your orientation sessions if you've got a couple more. And I'll see you back this time next week.
Thanks, Carly.
Thank you,
Take
Carly.
care, both of you. Bye.